a goal to connect the 600 million plus public Wi-Fi networks in the world today under a common login credential standard, which would create a roaming-like experience between them. We have a global user base of which there's a disproportionate number of users in even developing markets. How does someone stay connected between Wi-Fi nodes? And there's 3.5 million around the world, and we're compatible with those as well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unleashing DePIN Podcast. My name is Tyler. I am your host, and I'm super excited for this next project that we get to have on the podcast. This is definitely another one of those DePIN projects. It's right up my alley in terms of things that I'm super interested in personally, so this is going to be a great conversation. But with that, please welcome Jeff from Rome. He is the co-founder of the project. And Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler. Excited to be here and excited to talk to you about Rome, what we're building, what we've been building, and where we're going. Thanks.
I'm really excited. You guys are in that DY DePIN space that I think is just so interesting. It's a huge problem that you're tackling, and I really like the approach that you're taking. So this is going to be a super fun conversation. But for everybody that's tuning in, can you give a little bit of context and background about who you are, how you maybe got into the space? What was your first introduction to maybe DePIN or DY, and we can jump through things from there?
Yeah, like most people, I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole at some point. For me, it actually came out of economics lens. So my background is in economics, and studying the Austrian theory, the gold bug thesis stuff. It led me eventually to Bitcoin, being relatively younger and tech interested. So I was like, what is this thing? Why is it worth anything? What is digital money? Went down that rabbit hole, and in some ways just never really looked back. Once you see it or you understand it, it changes your perspective, what's possible. So I ended up doing a bit of management consulting, which eventually led into a role with a startup here in Vancouver, doing very early ICO advisory, early crypto work. So that eventually led to that company getting acquired by Galaxy Digital out of New York. But in the 2019 bear market, they ended up pulling out of Vancouver. It was anyone who went through it. 2019 was a pretty deep bear market. There was a lot of people, even that I know, the crypto people, that thought it could be over. And I ended up getting synced up with a couple other guys here in Vancouver, including my co-founder Yen now, and we started Bitcoin mining. So that was the journey and my intro and getting to know Yen. And then Yen came to me 3 years ago now. It was fall of 21. And he had a new idea around combining some Web3 and DID specifically toolkits to solve Web2 problems and to solve problems in the wireless domain. So his background comes from the telco wireless world for a decade or more. And so we started working on what was then called MetaBlocks and what is today called Rome.
That's amazing. We're going to definitely have to sync after the fact. So I'm from Seattle. I know that we talked about this a little bit. You're in Vancouver. When I cut my teeth in kind of Web3, it was doing a lot of the decentralized identity stuff in Seattle. So I'm sure we might have had some overlap at some point there with what you were doing. But when he first came to you talking about this idea, what were those initial problem sets that you were looking to solve using this Web3 technology within the wireless connectivity space? Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So specifically within the Wi-Fi space, you have an organization called the Wireless Broadband Alliance, and that is WBA for short. And it's an association of members, of which most members are major big tech companies like Cisco and big telcos like AT&T and Deutsche Telekom and Rogers here in Canada, et cetera, around the world. And the reason to have this association is its goal is to advocate the future of Wi-Fi standards and deployment and utilization and how that's going to evolve over time. And so Yen had an understanding early on of the objectives of the WBA, specifically around building what they call open roaming or the global open roaming network. And what that is, a goal to connect the 600 million plus public Wi-Fi networks in the world today under a common login credential standard, which would create a roaming-like experience between them. The best way to describe this on the mobile side, the alternative is the mobile cell phone side. When you're driving down a highway, your phone is connecting from one tower to the next tower to the next tower seamlessly, all automatic. You don't even notice it. Even more, I could drive from Vancouver down to Seattle, and as soon as I cross the border, I'm leaving Rogers network here at home and connecting to AT&T or Verizon or somebody in the US automatically. I don't even notice it. Seamless like experience is also possible in Wi-Fi. It's just never really been implemented on a wide scale outside the exception of within a single organization usually. So if you were working in a big company or a government, you might move from one building to the next and it all works. Or also the university system. One of the best examples of what open roaming will look like is called EduRoam. And it's a university roaming network between different universities and schools around the world. So from that side of the telco industry, their goal is to build out this global open roaming network. Like I mentioned, there's over 600 million public hotspots today. Only 3.5 million have been connected to open roaming or are open roaming compatible. So it's still a lot of nodes. There's 3.5 million hotspots out there that you can roam on and our users can roam on using the credentials, but still it's a tiny fraction of the goal. And we looked at what happened with Helium as an inspiration. We said, okay, if you've combined the Web3 incentivization and token layer with a global distributed CapEx investment and roll it out, what if you apply that same perspective to Wi-Fi as they did on LoRa originally? So it's really a combination of understanding some of the goals and challenges within the industry, combined with some of the inspiration of what was happening in the Web3 tech world, and combining those together. And then there was a few other components, DIDs, how to combine a DID into a Wi-Fi credential system with verifiable credentials, as well as just some other interesting tech that our team has built over the last 3 years to make all of this work seamlessly on Apple and Android devices. So that's been a really big challenge for the team.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've got so many questions. One of the first, just for level setting for those that are maybe not as familiar around these open standards, is it Passpoint that is the ubiquitous standard that's been used for unlocking all of roaming compatible networks? Is that right?
Yeah, so Passpoint is the underlying architecture. So open roaming is built on top of Passpoint. So Passpoint is the underlying architecture that allows for that like certificate-based authentication system. Yeah, then open roaming is another layer on top of it that allows for sharing of that certificate-based system between members so that our members can roam on each other's systems and networks. So that has traditionally been done through either a SIM card log, like a certificate, or through username and password login. Our big sort of jump or new tech is to actually use a DID identity to link that credential to it. And then that identity is self-sovereign, is held on device, on the user's device.
That's amazing. And we're going to unpack the business model, but it is effectively the DID, is that attached to the eSIM that you guys sell to customers, and that becomes the identifier by which users are able to access this roaming network with?
No. So the eSIM, yeah, we'll get into the eSIM here. The eSIM is a new additional area we're moving into to have Roam become a more all-encompassing connectivity solution. But the DID is specifically tied to the Wi-Fi credentials for open roaming. They are two separate identities, I guess you would say. The eSIM is running off its own identity today, but that could merge. And that's a really good point, that the DID could serve as that as well, if necessary. Because one of the really interesting things about a DID structure is the fact that it has the option, at least, to be anonymous, pseudonymous to a degree. And so whenever you have an app or especially a connectivity solution, or even your cell phone provider or a Wi-Fi provider or anything, there's a lot of location data that system automatically captures just from the nature of it. Like whenever you connect to a Wi-Fi, you know where it is and where somebody is. I think that having the DID structure, it gives it a unique opportunity to at least give people the option to be pseudonymous, anonymous, and or at any time just wipe their DID and create a new one. So that's interesting. So that might be also on the eSIM side too, your ability to just install a new eSIM.
Yeah.
And have that recycling effect.
Sure. Speaking of the eSIM, you guys just crossed a pretty exciting milestone. I saw that you crossed 1 million app users, which is pretty incredible. Can you talk through the kind of the growth side or maybe the business side of how that plays into the Roam network?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a huge milestone for the team. And a lot of the growth also is developing markets, right? Globally. So 1 million is a lot. But when you do have a product like ours that is free on both app stores and is globally available, the user base does add up. And we haven't spent a lot of money on marketing. It's been a lot of organic growth. We don't even have a token yet. It's all an internal point system. Obviously, there is a component of the token speculation that is feeding energy into the flywheel for sure. But that's another advantage of Web3 is you have this kickstarting engine to get things moving, get the flywheel moving. Then once it's moving, once you have a token and it's live and you're operating, then it's a question of what are the fundamentals of the business eventually? How does the business make money? How does that money in the ecosystem drive down to the token? And how does it do that sustainably over time? I think that's an exciting part, especially about our project. probably the most successful DePIN projects of this cycle will be the ones that can sustainably show real value accrual and deliver them down. So it does take time. Look at the DeFi space projects, the big projects like Uniswap and Aave and stuff. They are really having a moment now where their cost to acquire customers and everything is so much less because they've created the trust, created the brand, created their position, and they're just starting to turn on these monetization mechanisms that are going to be huge in the future. So it's like that DeFi 2.0 summer idea, and that might be next summer where these projects are very profitable. But I think DePIN is still fairly early. There hasn't been a great example of it so far, but we plan and hope to be one. So we have a lot of monetization strategies and angles, especially when you're solving a large network problem. An existing industry like Wi-Fi has different monetization opportunities, and that's the main focus of our team.
I think the growth rate is sort of showcasing that it's certainly going in the right direction. On top of the app users, you also have quite a few on-chain transactions that are happening. I think the last metric that I saw was like 300,000 daily transactions. Someone that's just trying to understand the business case of what you're solving, what does that actually translate to for just a user's perspective? Is, a transaction meaning people are connecting to an access point? Can you share how that fits into Roam?
Yeah, so a very critical part of DePIN or an incentivized network of any kind is an accurate verification layer to it. So what a check-in for us is somebody adds a Wi-Fi or goes to a location where one of our Wi-Fis is available. They already have access to the internet, so they don't need to check in to get Wi-Fi. So that's a critical component. Like if you don't want to check in, you don't have to. But what we do is we incentivize people to check in, because checking in for us is an active validation process that this service exists in this part of the world and it has a certain quality and all the other characteristics we're looking for. And then that process in turn leads to the payments of points and stuff to our miners. So that's a very critical component. So we want to incentivize people to go and verify the network and check in and earn rewards for doing so. It's also an extremely active process. So what's unique about apps on a phone, and we all think about it, on a daily basis, what do we open? 5, mainly 10 apps kind of on a day, like maybe on a daily basis. So if we can be one of the apps that people do frequently come back to open and interact with, that opens up a lot of other opportunities for how we monetize it or add new value to it. So it's a critical component of a DePIN network, but it also has a lot of potential for just having users come back and interact with us.
Sure. That's another exciting growth metric that I think lends to you're on the right track of doing the right things. Unpack for me the other aspects of the business model for people that are trying to understand. I know that you have your own physical hardware. I've actually got a device right here that I can flash in a little while, but
one right here.
You got one there. Yeah, there you go. There it is.
This is the very first version of it, back when we were called Metablocks still.
Metablocks. I love it. I love
V1.
it. I love all those. And then it's the white one. That's V2.
Yeah, that's the one you have in the box there. So that's our latest.
That's amazing. And so people can buy the physical hardware. Is it also true that users can convert or add existing networks to the ecosystem? Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, for sure. Whatever you're building, a network is a marketplace, two-sided. So you need to have different ways to bootstrap and grow the network. So yes, we sell our own miner, and we highly encourage people to check it out and potentially give it a shot. It'll obviously produce the most rewards over time from our ecosystem, because that's what we're trying to incentivize. But ultimately, we don't really need to sell all of the hardware, nor could we even really, to have as big of impact as possible. So another major plan of ours is to basically release firmware for routers, existing routers, to upgrade them to utilize the Roam protocol and be access to the Roam network. And so as a starting point for that, we allow people to upload their own Wi-Fi or the business's Wi-Fi to our system. And in doing so, we're capturing some of that data of what type of router it is. So we'll know what the most common router types are and what's the firmware sequence we should work on. And it also just adds more value. So ultimately, having more locations, more Wi-Fi potential adds value. So it's a combination of our own miners, what we call community nodes, and open roaming nodes. Open roaming nodes are the telco and open roaming partner networks that are open roaming compatible. There's 3.5 million around the world, and we're compatible with those as well. So on top of all the nodes that we have, the community ones is also 3.5 million open roaming nodes.
That's amazing. That's such a big number, but also at the same time, as you alluded to earlier, there's such a big market opportunity to start converting all of those. How do you sort of see Roam fitting in with incumbents or other kind of players that already exist in the space and maybe disrupting or creating new layers of value? Can you just talk through the existing market a little bit and where that disruption point is really beginning to unfold for Roam?
Yeah, for sure. I think we look at everything as a very collaborative sort of way. Wi-Fi, open roaming, Passpoint, all the things we are building on top of are all open standards under the same association. All the other members have access to it too. So really it is a collaborative way. Like even the open roaming goal, we want to be the main distributed partner to roll out open roaming, but we still want all the other major partners to do it as well because we help out each other's networks. Other Web3 projects, we're in talks with Helium right now as well as about potentially collaborating there. They're actually looking towards Wi-Fi now a lot more than they were before. So that's really sort of solidified our thesis we've been working on for a few years. And then as far as the telcos go, we also have a lot of interest from the telcos because ultimately, they see Wi-Fi as a backhauling, network potential of open roaming. And then on the eSIM side now too, we're actually partnering with them. So really it's like the Wi-Fi, we're building them this network they can access into. And then in the meantime, we're kind of accessing their networks using the eSIM component of our product. So it's a really good sort of partnership trade there. So there hasn't been any projects that have been there's no competitor project or anything that's like hostile in any degree because ultimately it's all compatible and should be.
Yeah, no, I think that's, it's certainly one of those things where the more interconnected all of these different systems are, the better it's going to be for users. And presumably the more money that folks will be able to make as you're kind of growing that pie in an exponential type of way. Speaking of the monetization side, how does Roam actually make money outside of sort of selling the eSIMs? If you've got users or if you've got devices that have sort of converted into the network, how does the monetization stream or path sort of work its way back to Roam in particular?
Yeah, so there's quite a few angles here. Right now, what we're working on as the lowest hanging fruit is the implementation of very light Wi-Fi based ads, like a lot of other Wi-Fi systems in the world built into the app. So during the current check-in system, we would just have some images and animations during the process. We just replace those with certain ads, and that creates some value streams. Right now, we're spending all of that and kicking it back to give free data to people as a growth metric. So really, like the monetization is there to kickstart the eSIM program and get people onto Roam. The bigger picture as far as monetization is also on the distributed hardware side. So having routers in the world with the performance that these do, with the performance that they have and the storage, we can tap into VPN, CDN services. So that's, Web 2 established Wi-Fi services that we can, monetize the network over time with. And then there's a lot more other things. We want to be a platform for people to discover other projects, so some discovery angles in the future. But yeah, there's a lot of angles for monetization.
Sure. On the hardware side, can you talk about what your miners are able to do that's unique versus, you talked about CDN and VPN accessibility, but what's enabled on the hardware that you don't get with maybe an existing access point that you're converting? And how does that kind of continue growing the value of the Roam network?
Well, yeah, for something specifically like the CDN network or services, it does require a certain amount of storage capability of the router and performance. So, the one at someone's house might not be able to be suitable for like a CDN type service. Our router that we sell obviously comes with the entire Roam firmware and protocol and everything baked in, open roaming capabilities. So yeah, it's a very high performance router made by a very large router manufacturer.
That's awesome. What else is on the roadmap for Roam? You've got the app. Are there other kind of planned enhancements with respect to eSIMs that you're able to talk about for the future of the network?
Yeah, so the eSIM is the major additional strategy implementation right now. So Wi-Fi is great, and we all agree that a roaming seamless like Wi-Fi experience has a lot of value. But we have a global user base of which there's a disproportionate number of users in even developing markets. How does someone stay connected between Wi-Fi nodes? And the eSIM offering really came to be also through the progress of the eSIM sort of ecosystem as well. So it's a fascinating area. It's been growing a ton. I've been using them for a couple of years now when I travel, and all modern hardware, for one, is compatible with it. For two, there are some major resellers out there and retailers out there, so it's driving down the prices of these packages. And yeah, we can just create this idealistic connectivity solution where someone can move from one Wi-Fi network to the next and automatically seamlessly connect. And in between, they're using cellular data, using our eSIM. And ultimately, the goal here is also to try and create effectively the world's first free telco model. So if we can drive enough like DePIN distributed work down through the building of the network and the validation of the network and feed that back into giving free data to users, you're creating this ecosystem of a free telco model, or trying to break the existing telco model. So that's the strategy right now on that side. Obviously, we're going to also make it possible for people to buy more data as needed. And in the future, maybe there's some sort of very good deal on subscription plans for the cellular side. But yeah, a lot of ideas there. But ultimately, the idea is a more all-encompassing connectivity solution.
Is there sort of this future potential where you can, as you grow the nodes and just everybody on the network, you can almost circumvent a lot of the traditional or existing legacy telco, and it could really be handled by this distributed network of access points? Is that where you're seeing things going in the future?
Potentially. So on the cellular side, like distributed cellular is a lot harder. And that's what Helium's facing now for a couple of reasons. So the spectrum for cellular typically isn't open. Most countries in the world have a very limited amount of open spectrum available for the cellular range. The exceptions being like CBRS in the US, which Helium utilizes. So it's a tough one because you'd have to go country by country and find the right spectrum and then negotiate and everything. As well as just the actual deployment of cell-capable towers and all that is a lot harder than Wi-Fi and more expensive.
Yeah.
So right now we're thinking of it as like tapping into those existing telcos for the eSIM side. One thing interesting about the cellular industry and finance industry is they actually overlap and cross a lot, especially in developing markets. In a lot of countries, the Philippines, Indonesia, probably I think Africa as well, a lot of the biggest telcos are the same companies that have some of the biggest banks. And so that overlap of like trust between telcos and banks is really interesting. So I think that parallel to what we're doing with DePIN and connectivity and then crypto is really interesting as well. It actually makes sense to have that wallet in the app, in the Roam app, and somebody can do certain financial transactions as well, even within the same connectivity solution.
That's interesting. On the crypto side specifically, they're pre-TGE. Are you able to talk about kind of roadmaps or timelines of when the tokenization incentive aspect of the network will be available and how that might find its way into the app experience for users?
Yeah, so we've been working really hard on this. Obviously, we've delayed our TGE a couple times. It's really just due to getting the right listings. Like every crypto project, getting on the right exchanges and the right listings can make a lot of difference for the performance of the underlying asset and liquidity of the markets and long-term momentum. Those conversations are ongoing and we're really working hard on that. So we pushed it a little. I don't want to give a too exact date, but very soon will be the TGE.
That's awesome. And what chain will you actually launch your token on?
Yeah, we're on Solana. So the token will be on Solana as well. And all of our data and check-in data, everything's on Solana as well.
Okay, very good, very good. What else is on the roadmap for people, or things that are part of the project that we haven't really got a chance to cover yet?
We've covered quite a bit. So we are celebrating our 1 million users threshold. We're giving away 1 gigabyte of data to people who use the promo code. It's available on our Twitter or X. So that's one thing we're doing now, is celebrating that. There's going to be some new updates and releases to the app consistently in the next couple of months that are going to be very exciting, and to get all the pieces together to handle the eSIM and the TG. Yeah, I think we covered most things.
That's awesome. Well, on that note, we do have a little bit of extra alpha to give away, which is we are going to be giving away a device for listeners. We have a piece of hardware that you guys were very generous to donate that we will be sharing with everybody here. We'll have kind of the exact details and whatnot in a little bit for folks. But, you mentioned Twitter. Are there other places where people can stay up to date with Roam? Yeah,
we have pretty active Discord community, so check that out. But otherwise, yeah, Twitter is the place to follow us.
Perfect. And we'll be sure to link all that down below for folks so that they can find it. Be sure to get involved. We will have all the details with respect to the giveaway here soon that we'll share with folks on Twitter. But with that being said, Jeff, I want to thank you again, man. I'm really excited about what you're doing. You guys are solving a huge problem. I love that you're leveraging all the benefits of kind of Web3 and crypto to function in that network and just build a better mousetrap as a result. It's amazing that you've got 1 million app users, and I know that's going to just continue to grow exponentially. But just want to thank you so much again for coming on. We will have all of that information linked below between their Twitter, their Discord, as well as the giveaway details. So please stay up to date with what's happening there. And with that being said, we'll probably wrap it up here, Jeff, but we'll see everybody on the next one. We wanted to thank you for coming on and tuning in.
Thank you, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.